these things will change.
Hi friends! So, some of you saw me this week in the school, which means I know you're talking about solids, liquids, and gases. I know this because I got to have a yummy root beer float with you. And we talked about how the ice cream was a solid, the root beer was a liquid, and the bubbles that formed were the gas. But I understand that maybe you have some questions about what a gas really is and how things change from one state to another. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, is how things change state of matter. I've already talked to you about how the things around us are made up of molecules. And we've mentioned that those molecules are made up of even smaller things called atoms. Well, atoms are so small that you can't even see them with a microscope. You have to use a fancy microscope called an electron microscope to even be able to tell what's going on with an atom. Today, we're going to look at how atoms come together to make a molecule, and then what happens with molecules to cause solids to become liquids and then gases.
This is what we call the periodic table of elements. You see, there's only so many different types of atoms out there, but there's a whole bunch of ways they can come together. This table gives us an idea of how many different atoms there are. Each of those atoms has listed with it all of their differences, but their differences aren't nearly as important to us as their similarities.
I want you to pretend that each of these Legos is a different atom. Notice that some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them might be heavy, some of them might be light. They do have some things that are similar though, don't they? They all have these little knobs on the top, and they have the holes on the bottom so they can stick together. Let's pretend this one might be an oxygen. This might be a hydrogen. That could be potassium, fluoride, iodine, carbon, nitrogen. There's lots of atoms all around us.
It's going.
Actually, don't do that. For the purposes of understanding states of matter, we're going to work specifically with water. And that's because we get to see water change state all the way from a solid, as an ice cube, to gas, as steam coming off a pot of boiling water. And we all know that in the middle, the liquid is just water. Now, water is a molecule made up of 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. Come on over here, I'll show you what it looks like. So we've already said that these are going to be our hydrogen atoms. And this is an oxygen atom. What happens is these atoms get close together and they actually stick together to make one little molecule of water. Now that we have a molecule of water, I want to show you what happens when lots of molecules of water come together and what happens when it's cold. So when it's cold, we have water molecules that sort of get close together and line up nice and straight, or as best they can at least, and they fill in all the tiny little spaces between them. So in this case, they might look like this, or this. But when it's cold, they don't move very much. They just sit there. We call that ice. And you know, ice is a solid. Now, if it starts to heat up a little bit, they start to kind of shake, the molecules do. And when the molecules shake, they move away from each other. At this point, our water is now a liquid. They're not so tight together, and there's some spaces in between. They're going to flow out and kind of fill the space where they are, but they're not going to leave each other. Here's the fun part. When it starts to get really hot, they shake really fast, and they start to jump all over, and your molecules go as far as they can away from one another, and that's a gas. So if you can see all of our water molecules all over, you can tell that you won't be able to see tiny drops of water. They're out there, not looking like water to you. They're just filling up as much space as they can. I hope that helps you understand the differences between solids, liquids, and gases, and how temperature is really what affects our states of matter. Remember, when it's cold, it's a solid, and it sticks together. And when it's really hot, it gets as far away from the nearest molecule of the same thing, and it goes as far as it can and fills up all the spaces. The last thing that might be kind of confusing is when mom and dad say they're putting gas into a car. Well, that kind of gas isn't actually a gas, it's a liquid. And really what it is it's a liquid form of oil. And it helps our engines run. But it's not a state of matter. Thanks again for inviting me into your classrooms, first grader, and for actually letting me come in and make root beer floats with you so I could see solids, liquids, and gases all at one time. I'm excited to hear what you guys do next in science. Keep asking me lots of questions. Have a good weekend, first graders.